He's not Hush Limbaugh. He's not Shame Hannity. And he's certainly not Bill O'Liar. But he is a limousine-driving turbo-liberal. And his name is Sir Cooper. And his co-host, who is not Ann Coulter or Michelle Bachman, but is Amber Alyson, bringing you the real deal with their skills. So attention, independents, libertarians, blue dog Democrats, and members of the Republican Party. Just like America, back with pride, dignity, and respect. Here is Amber Alyson and Sir Cooper.
All right. Welcome to Let's Get Serious About Talk on KLAV, coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. And my co-host with her wonderful self, Miss Amber Alyson, coming from you live in Los Angeles, California. What's happening, Am?
Hey, I am so hyped.
I know you are, because we got a special guest in the house. Mr. Skolnik is also on the line. Hello, Mr. Skolnik. How are you?
Good. Good to speak to you all.
Well, you sound absolutely fantastic, young man. You sound good. Mr. Skolnik wrote a nice piece about how he will never be stereotyped or how he will never be pigeonholed, shall we say. And I'm being nice about it, but he has another way of putting it. Mr. Skolnik, tell us about your synopsis on this.
When Trayvon Martin was murdered on February 26, 2012, as the editor-in-chief of GlobalGrind.com, we initially ran the story just simply as another young black man who was killed in this country, and left it at that. A few weeks later, as the story continued to build, I decided to write a piece called Dear White People, You Will Never Look Suspicious Like Trayvon Martin. You can't see my face, but I am white American, and felt the need to write a piece to white people, folks of my race, about the fact that we can walk down the street and no one grabs their purse. We can go to a restaurant and no one asks us to pay before we eat. We can walk down the street with a hoodie and jeans and white tennis shoes on, and no one calls the police and says we look suspicious.
Absolutely.
So with that privilege of never being assumed suspicious, what are we going to do with it? When a young black man, child, was killed in this country, Trayvon Martin, this country, as terms of white America, was eerily quiet.
Absolutely.
So I challenged my own people to stand up and to join in the call for justice for this young man and for his family.
Now, I will tell you, I read some of your stuff, and I will tell you, I was quite moved. After all, like you said, you are a white person, and you have never experienced that. And a couple of months ago, I actually was racially profiled. And when you're trying to explain things like that to people, they look at you as though you are coming from another planet. And what I want to know from you is, what made you dive into the depthness you did with this particular story?
Hold on, Michael. Before you answer that, I actually do have the article, and I just wanted to, pick out parts of it. It starts off, I will never look suspicious to you. Then it skips, says, I will never look suspicious to you because of one thing and one thing only, the color of my skin. I am white. I was born white. It was the card I was dealt. No choice in the matter. I have no guilt for the color of my skin or the privilege that I have. Remember, it was just the next card that came out of the deck. But I have choices. I got choices on how I play the hand I was dealt. I'll go from there.
Well, I'm a student of great elders who have come before me.
Okay.
Heroes of mine. One of them happens to be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who made it very clear to all of us, not just to white America or black America, but to all of America, that the rights that we take for granted are worthless unless we fight for the rights of others. So when you have places like Chicago that have 53 shootings in one weekend, or a city like New York that has 77 shot in a 7-day period, and majority of them are black and brown. You have a city like the city I live in New York, that has a program, a policy called Stop and Frisk, which targets young black and brown people, who most of them are, 90% of them are innocent, have never committed a crime in their life, and nor are caught with anything on them when they are stopped and frisked. When you have programs and policies that target groups of people, and you just expect them to figure it out on their own, your rights are worthless.
I need to ask you, have you ever heard of Tim Wise?
You know, it's funny, you mentioned Tim. I hadn't heard of Tim up until I wrote this blog, and then a lot of people asked me that question, do you know Tim? And I reached out to Tim after I learned of him and started reading his work, and Tim and I had dinner about a month ago in New York.
Oh, okay.
We sat for about 3.5 hours in a restaurant, and he's become a hero of mine. And I told him after I read his book, Dear White, I think it's Dear White America. I told him I think if I had read that book before I wrote the pieces that I've written, you might charge me with plagism, because the things that I'm saying are
the same thing, yeah,
are so close to what he's been saying
Absolutely.
for years. So I always feel bad. But he told me, you know, I'm a younger version of him, and I took that with a great compliment.
Same thing I was thinking, because I first came across him in the 1980s. Okay, and he was talking about white privilege.
Okay, well, I go back a little bit further, 1970 something.
All right. Well, I had never heard anyone, you know, deal with that phenomena or even give it a name, even though black people are aware of its existence at early ages. And I have a few clips I want to play by Tim.
Okay.
How is it not an issue that, according to that Justice Department report, while black and brown folk are having their wheel wells ripped apart on the side of the road, their trunks splayed open, their dashboards ripped apart in the search for drugs which aren't even there, white people like me are driving by the roadblock with a trunk full of weed, and we're just waving. Because we're not suspected, therefore we're not detected, therefore we're not punished. How is that not an issue? Denial. In every generation, 2007, 1963, the 30s, the 1890s, the 1850s, my point being that in every generation, members of the dominant group have said there is no problem. And in every generation, without fail, we have been wrong. Absolutely. And in every generation, people of color, those who were the targets of that oppression and subordination, have said there is a problem. And in every generation, without fail, they have been right. So the question for us today is, what are the odds, honestly, that people of color who have never gotten it wrong have suddenly lost their frickin' minds and have suddenly become unable to see truth and to separate it from fiction? And counter to that, what are the odds that white folks who have never gotten it right yet have suddenly become highly, highly perceptive?
Fantastic. I'm telling you, Mr. Wise was on top of this years ago, but it's like a tree falling in the woods. Nobody hears it, or nobody acknowledges that it's there,
except us.
And see, when it comes to you and what you wrote, sir, I will tell you, I was shocked that you would be so open and so honest, being as young as you are, to be that astute as to what is going on in America. And everybody around you is like the poem by Rudyard Kipling, If.
That's right.
You got me?
Right.
That's right.
And I will tell you, I was when Amber called me and told me about you, and she said, we got to get this man on. I said, okay, set it up, because I love where you're coming from, because a lot of Americans need to be educated as in what minorities do go through. How many times have I gone to a mall and I park the car? I get out of my car, and I see people coming toward me out of the mall, and I'm the only one in the parking lot. I find myself doing everything I possibly can to make the white couple approaching me, feel as comfortable as I can possibly make them. And this is unconscious.
And I've gone through an experience where, you know, I mean, I value me as a person, okay?
Absolutely.
But I have gone to a store where the only person in there was the white person behind the counter, you know, and I walk in, she doesn't move except her eyeballs, you know, doesn't move to help me. But then a white person comes in behind me, and she's all over her, you know. So me valuing me, I just, excuse me, I was here first, okay? White people do that, and it's like, it's on purpose.
But it gets to the point, to back to your point, the thing that happened with Trayvon, had it been a white kid, had the situation been reversed, this man never would have been sent home. This man would have been arrested on the spot, and he would have been held in jail without bail.
Had he been given bail, it would have been so high he wouldn't have been.
He wouldn't have been able to make it.
But people of color live and breathe the dynamics of white privilege every day.
Absolutely.
We teach our kids about it because we have to. If we don't, we put ourselves in jeopardy. But for us, white privilege is often dealt out in terms of racial abuse and profiling, as what happened to you and Trayvon and a whole bunch of other folks.
Now, when you bring this stuff to your friends, when you're talking to your friends and people really don't know what you're about, how do they respond to some of the things that you say, sir?
I think I'm born and raised in hip hop in New York, so and now I work for Russell Simmons. And when I talk to white people, especially, the challenge is that if you look at the political spectrum or compassionate people, let's just say compassionate people, who want to care.
Okay.
Who want to care that Trayvon Martin was shot with a bullet in his, one bullet in his chest. The challenge is that in conversation with people of color, there's a lot of, I understand. And when you all were just talking about going to the mall or going into a store, I don't understand that.
Because you can't
just
relate.
Like I would never tell a woman what it's like to walk in an empty parking lot at 11 o'clock at night to go to her car and have to walk in fear that someone's hiding behind a pillar or somewhere and is going to potentially rape her. I could never understand that feeling because I never had that feeling.
Exactly.
So I've never walked down the street and seen somebody grab their bag. Now, here's the thing. But I challenge any white listener who's living, in Las Vegas or any part of this country, because I've heard this response. Well, we have hard lives too. The difference is they can walk into any restaurant in America and put on a hoodie, a pair of jeans, and a pair of tennis shoes, and they will never get asked to pay the check before they eat. So this idea that, we have the privilege of never looking suspicious goes beyond your economic status, goes beyond your upbringing. It's just simple the color of your skin.
Absolutely.
So when I challenge my white friends who want to care, want to feel something, it's not about understanding. Because if I say to you, I understand what it's like to go to a mall and have to make white people feel comfortable, you might politely say, thank you, Mr. Skolnik, that's nice of you. But when you go home, you say, this guy's an asshole. So you think to yourself, this guy's not telling me the truth. So therefore, I can't trust him. Therefore, him and I cannot connect on a much deeper relationship than just what's surface. So instead, I say to you, or I say to Trayvon's family, I am deeply, deeply saddened by what happened to you and your family, what happens to you every single day. I do not understand what it is like to go through that or to experience those kinds of things. The only thing that I can do is be honest with you and say, this is the hand that I was dealt. And what I tell a lot of people when I speak, if you want to judge me by the hand that I was dealt, that's your problem. If you want to judge me by the hand that how I played that hand, that's my problem.
Absolutely. In other words, the things that you have no control over.
No control over.
No control whatsoever, but the things that you do control, which is the way you look at a situation.
That's
like
exactly
most of the people that looked at this Trayvon situation, instead of them looking at the facts of basically what happened, they start looking at, well, what did he do to cause this man to shoot him? Automatically, that was the defense there.
Okay, even Zimmerman and his lawyer are saying he basically asked for it.
Absolutely.
Last night's interview with Sean Hannity, Zimmerman said,
Lord have mercy.
Slightly odd. The whole thing is odd to me, but he said that this, Trayvon didn't look like he lived in the community. Well, what does that mean? Right? Are there no black teenagers in your community? Is it an all-white community? I mean, you're Latino. Are there other Latino teenagers in the community?
Absolutely.
Is it just white people? Like, what does that mean? It doesn't look like he belongs in the community. I mean, that to me is code word. Is that he's black,
Absolutely.
and we have black
he
people
doesn't
here.
belong.